Alright, welcome to the channel, and today we'll be talking about the Xduoo, pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, Xduoo MT-604, which is a little tube amp. It's a budget amp, and it's a good entry, I believe, into tubes. And let's kind of discuss why I think that moving forward. But first, this was provided to me by Apos Audio. They are not asking me to say anything other than my honest opinion about this device, and this will be going out to somebody else once I'm done with this video. So let's dive right into my thoughts on this. So let's roll right into this, and I'll be listening off of a Bifrost 2 from Shit Audio and the Xduoo balanced, and I'll be using my Verite opens. So right off the bat, this thing's interesting because it has dual volume pots, one for the left cup and one for the right cup, and it can be a little bit awkward at times, but it's kind of interesting because you can actually turn the dials individually until you get the center image, and you can like fine-tune where your center image is. And it's also really small little device. Actually, the other thing I really like is I really like the colors. So, but anyways, we'll dive into that in the build and aesthetics. Let's dive into audio first, and we'll start with the highs, mids, lows, that kind of thing. And so first off, I am listening to the Jungle Giants, In Her Eyes. And this is kind of more of a electronic dance pop type of thing. The lows are very clean and punchy, and they have a nice separation. Like, they're really controlled, which I was really impressed. Like, for this device, for how much it costs, the lows, especially with like these kind of tracks, it's really well done. And the mids, going into the mids from the lows, they have a nice richness to it. In fact, the whole thing has an unexpected richness. I wasn't really expecting much from this, so that could also play into it. I plugged it in, almost zero noise floor. Turn the volumes all the way up. Turn the volume all the way up. I guess volumes is correct. Turn the volume all the way up with nothing playing, and I had zero noise. The lows are really punchy and clean and full, and they have a really well done richness to them. Leads into the mids, which also follows suit with this nice forward mids, which is something I really enjoy, and it really fleshes that out and gives it a nice fullness and richness to the mids as well. And depending, even with acoustic tracks or jazz, blues, what have you, like Go-Go Penguin, or actually I was listening to a lot of Mingus as well, so that was kind of a fun one to listen to. And then that leads into the highs, which have they're not quite aggressive. They have a nice balance to them. So let's go into another track here. So for the mids, let's do Miss Ida B by Buddy Guy. Miss Ida B by Buddy Guy for some of the highs and the mids. And this has a really good drum line, bass, and guitar. And the piano as well is quite fantastic for getting that sparkle. To see about the highs having a nice sparkle. So sometimes this track can have a bit too much sparkle with that electric guitar. That twanginess can really become piercing if you have it on certain chains. And with this, surprisingly, it controls it well. It gives you enough sparkle where it's not becoming a problem. Let's dive into some vocals with this real quick. Okay, so the vocals for this track, they're actually somewhat notorious for being a little bit pulled back compared to like the instruments, which is fine, but they sound rich, they sound nice, they sound accurate. Let's go into another track that has a little more vocal forward or vocal focused track. Let's go with Susan Wong, Vincent. This is the next track I'll be listening to. Okay, so the guitar, the tone just sounds excellent. Very tube sounding, not quite super gooey or overly tube sounding. This would probably lean a little bit more to the tubey side of it, but it's not overly romantic. Warm neutral, maybe neutral warm. Vocals are very forward and full sounding and rich, especially when it's a vocal forward track. Let's dive into staging, imaging, and separation detail, that whole fun stuff. So with the Susan Wong Vincent track, so you can hear her mouth opening, or that lip smack kind of sound, or like the little pops, you know, from someone singing, and it's really cool. The detail, you can hear the guitar slide, you can hear the way that the strings are hitting. So the details are very crisp. The imaging and separation is really well done. I can easily pick it apart. It's very tube amp sounding, like with the stage being pretty darn wide. I wouldn't say it's the most wide sounding. I mean, obviously it factors with the headphones. So I'm going to put on another track that's going to be for stage and imaging, that kind of stuff, and see what I can come up with here. I think I'm going to do The Peppery Man by Natalie Merchant. Okay, so Peppery Man, not the greatest as far as like staging, but the imaging is really cool because you get the different instruments and singers in different cups and placement. It does really well. Plus, it's got a fantastic mid-range. The male vocals are very like gravelly and rumbly, and then you have her being kind of a more rich sounding female vocals, and it's very good. And the imaging and separation is it has that tube quality of being almost holographic, or that 3D factor of a tube amp. And this does it pretty well. Very impressed. Let's dive into Signal to the Noise by Gogo Penguin for more of the stage side of the house. It does a really good job. Like it's a good stage, and I'm really impressed. The image and separation though is really good. Like it's very nice, concise. I can easily pick up where things are happening. I can easily see where the instruments are coming from. The plucks, the drums, also just really fantastic. I think the way that they present themselves they have that splash without being like that sharpness to them or over sharp. The bass line in this is also excellent. So the bass has not quite as forward as I've heard it with other chains, but it does have a nice, fairly accurate sound signature. So final thoughts on the audio side of this little tube amp. Very impressive how good this sounds for the cost performance, and it just sounds really good. Like, I was even comparing it against my Eddy Current ZDT Junior. Honestly, I felt that the mids were a little more forward with the Xduoo MT-604 over the Eddy Current ZDT. In fact, I'm plugging into the ZDT now, and I'm going to do the signal and the noise real quick just to get a quick refresher on that. Alright, back to the Xduoo. Between the two, I would say that there's a little more forwardness in the Xduoo. There's a little more richness to it, where I think the Eddy Current, for whatever reason, seems a little more, leans more neutral, where the Xduoo, to me, in this setup with the Bifrost, is leaning more towards a warmth, and there's a little more richness there with the Xduoo. So like the hi-hats and what have you on the drums are a little bit more controlled with the Xduoo. Yeah, so they just feel a little more splashy, a little more crisp on the ZDT Junior. With vocals as well, I did notice that the vocals seem to be pulled a little bit further back on the ZDT Junior over the Xduoo. For the price performance, honestly, it's a fantastic way to get into tubes. It's really good sounding. I'm really impressed with it. So let's go into the build and aesthetics of this. This thing it's a cool looking little tube amp. We have your two volume pots here, and they're nice. They have a nice easy feel, a little bit of a grain to them. If you're like sitting here, I can hear like a little bit of grain, a little bit of resistance, but nothing crazy. Basic inputs. Actually pretty cool is they have the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon in and out, so if you had the right cables you could probably plug in a external DAP and have this play through it. So speaking of the 4.4, I did try the 4.4 with my Unique Melody Mest with 4.4 Pentacon out. It did get a little bit, the noise floor did come up. I could actually hear a little bit more of the tube noise with that, but that's to be expected. It's their IEMs are going to be a little more sensitive, but it wasn't gnarly. It wasn't even horrible. Like, I barely noticed it, especially at listening volumes. These kind of got the little tiny little tubes there, and they're pretty solid little things. They have, I believe, little orange LEDs in each one. That's why it kind of has that orange glow. Basic design, and it's pretty solid build, actually. I'm really impressed with the build. I believe it's all aluminum. This might be plastic on the back here to kind of put it together. Just a pretty impressive little guy here. As far as aesthetics, I actually really dig the way they did the cutouts, the way that they did the colorway on this with the red knobs. I think that's a nice striking, like, kind of, it stands out. It has a nice contrast, and it looks, I personally like the look of it a lot. It has nice little accents here. The way that the top fits on has little, slides on, has little accents. The way that they did the cutouts and inlays here. And then even with the balance cables I have on there, it's heavy enough to where it wasn't getting pulled off or wasn't like kind of tilting up sometimes, like that happens with lighter deals. It has a nice heft to it for the size of it. I like it. I think it's cool. It's a cool little device. I'm kind of pleasantly surprised by how good this is. So going into my final overall thoughts on this, not really expecting much. I was expecting this to be kind of like, one of those things where it is what it is. It's not, it's a little entry tube amp, nothing crazy. And I was pleasantly surprised. The sound quality, the build quality, I like the way it looks. Some of the things I don't necessarily think some people will get along with is that dual volume pot can be a little bit kind of an annoyance to some people. And maybe have one cup be louder than the other, and you can dial in your preferences that way. It's also really cool with that you can actually, as you turn it up, you can actually shift the image in the stage the way the center image is, and you can actually, that's how I've been able to dial it in. And once you get used to it, you kind of listen for it, and you can easily figure out where the volume is matched because the image gets right in the middle, that you can kind of fine tune that way as well. Sound quality is warm neutral with a very nice tube sound. Overall build and aesthetics is excellent, and I'm quite impressed with this. I think if I was to be traveling a lot, or if I had like another secondary desk set up someplace, or if I wanted to recommend something for someone that's just getting into tubes, I think this is my new go-to recommendation for entry into tubes, because it's cheap enough to where some people can get into it, and if you have a balanced DAC already, boom, it's pretty good way to kind of test these out and see what your thoughts are on the tube sound and if it's something you're into. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this. It's I think honestly, price performance, excellent. It's a cool entry into the tube world. This was kind of an interesting experiment with this style of video where I'm just kind of going and just seeing how it works. So hopefully it worked out and you guys dig it, and guys and gals, and we'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers. Have a good one. First off, right off the bat, this thing has an interesting build in the sense that it's got dual